Family, friends, subscribers, those in between, we want to welcome you back to the Palmetto Crew Podcast, aka the PCP. I'm one half of your show, Mr. Gerard June, former Gamecock, 2002-2006, Spurs up as always. I'm here with my brother slash cousin, Mr. Rodney Kinlaw.
Welcome back, PCP family. Glad to be here again with y'all another week. 03 to 07, Penn State, we are.
And we hope everyone enjoyed the last episode. Mr. Dexter Davis graciously came in and been a part of the show, and we were glad to have him on. We hope everyone enjoyed the show, enjoying the content. And be sure to like, subscribe, share. Be sure to tell all your friends, everybody you know. Tell everybody you know about the PCP podcast. Once again, Palmetto Crew Podcast.
And y'all can find us on Twitter, YouTube at Palmetto Crew. If you have any questions, comments, anything you want to talk about, you can email us as well, palmettocrew@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from y'all.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I just want to point this out. We had this discussion off air. So we like wearing graphic tees. We like staying fresh. We like to sip good. We like to eat good. So anything you guys want to send us, if you want to send us some t-shirts, you want to send us some hats, send us some gear, whatever, we'll definitely rock your gear on the show. We'll give you a shout out. We'll promote your business, whatever the case may be. So be sure to follow us once again on those social media avenues. You can inbox us, you can add us, you can share, like, whatever. So send us some gear, and once again, we'll rock your gear on the show. We like to stay fresh. We stay looking for the graphic tees and different things of that nature. So just want to put that out there. Be sure to send us some gear.
Just to piggyback off that, before we go any further, we have to say happy birthday to my brother here. He celebrated a birthday last week. How's it feel to be a year older?
Yeah, it feels good. So August 11th was my birthday. So we went out, we got a bite to eat. My wife surprised me with a birthday dinner. PCP family was out there, Mr. Jonathan Allen and his family. Of course, Rodney was there. So we had some friends and family, and we just fellowship, just ate good, had some good conversation. And it's good to be around people that genuinely love you and you want to be around. And I appreciate everybody coming out and all the birthday shout outs, all the text messages, everything that I got. So I definitely appreciate that, and blessed to be here for another year.
Yep, I hear that.
So we're gonna go ahead and get into it. Once again, this is episode 5 with the PCP, Palmetto Crew Podcast. And we want to get started. So I'm sure everybody's been seeing on ESPN, been looking on the news and reading newspapers, but the big story right now is the Michael Oher situation. So, everybody, I think most people have seen The Blind Side. For those who don't know, Michael Oher ended up going to Ole Miss, big-time offensive lineman, went to the NFL, played in the Super Bowl, but they had the movie The Blind Side about Michael Oher. A family adopted him, took him in. The movie grossed about $300 million, and now it sounds like the whole situation was just a lie.
Yeah. Even hearing those stories this week, I'm like, oh man, I feel bad for Michael and what happened to him. And I started doing a little more research. So he had a book came out last week. So it's like, is what he's saying, is it for publicity for the book, or is it something that really happened? And if it's something that happened, why was that still even a play so long ago?
Yeah,
especially him being a grown man now.
Yeah.
Why wasn't that was it conservatorship?
Conservatorship.
Yeah, conservatorship.
So the Tui family took him in. So apparently this family owns a lot of Taco Bells. They had money before they met Michael Oher, but Michael Oher is not really satisfied with how he was portrayed in the movie. Apparently he states this in the book. In the movie, he was stated as a juvenile who was continuously running away. He couldn't read, he couldn't write, and I heard him, he was doing some interviews, and he was saying a lot of his teammates in the locker room didn't think he learned the playbook, and they kind of looked at him differently just based on the way he was portrayed in the movie, and he didn't like that part of it. And just the whole situation, he was saying how he did plays in elementary school, and he was always a smart kid, but because of his background and his upbringing, there were just situations where he made some poor choices, as we all do. And apparently there's, anytime money is involved, there's a separation in there. So he's going back and forth with his family right now, and it's just a lot. It's getting real messy right now.
Yeah, and I think it plays a part of basically when you're that age coming up and you know you're a good football player and people start seeing you, so did that play into a factor? Because they went to Ole Miss. I think it was the dad might have went there. It was alumni, and when you seeing kids and the special players in middle school and high school, you can tell when the size is different. You can tell when someone's just gonna be different. And some people just put their hat in the ring early.
Yeah. So it comes down to, did this family prey on Michael Oher because they saw dollar signs in the future? Their defense is, well, we had money all the time. And for those who don't know, that conservatorship just basically means that Michael Oher couldn't make decisions on his own from a financial standpoint. So they basically took over. It's kind of like a power of attorney. It took over his financial situation. And once again, that movie made about $300 million. And then you consider the speaking engagements and everything that went behind that movie. There's a lot of money that went into that. So that family and their kids end up making money off of this movie. And once again, is it because the book is coming out now that we're hearing about this, or is it because they're looking at the financial situation and he's like, well, I didn't get as much as I should have got, based on everything that happened? But just kind of hearing the story, The Blind Side was a book to begin with, and then it turned into a movie. But the guy that wrote the book was a family friend. The guy that ended up doing the movie was a family friend. So it's a big coincidence that all of these dots were connected to people that were connected to this family that thought they adopted him. Well, he thought he was adopted, but it really wasn't adoption. It was just from the financial side. They took him over. So.
And I've heard stories about them saying, I guess in the book and in the movie, him saying that he knew he wasn't adopted before as well. And just, I guess so many people had their hands into it. So maybe he's seeing now like how he might have got played in the situation and seeing he didn't get as much as he should have gotten, especially since the story is about his life and just how they portrayed him. Even what you were saying about them making him feel or look like he wasn't smart, and being an athlete and being a football player, they put that stereotype out there. But you got to be smart to do that playbook, and even in halftime, you making halftime adjustments. You gotta have some sense to be able to basically be able to run those plays. So you can't be too slow. But
exactly.
they wanted. But I think they did it probably for movies to sell more and to make the story sound better. Like, oh, we helping this young, poor, uneducated guy out. So maybe it's Hollywood too. So we saw that part of it, and you just never know sometimes.
Exactly. And I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna put this out there. Leave Sandra Bullock alone. So Sandra Bullock is an actor, right? So y'all listen to these rap CDs. We watch all kind of movies. We watch all these series, all these TV shows. So 90% of the stuff you watch on TV is probably based on false information, something somebody made up, something somebody thought in their mind and say, hey, I'm gonna make this a story and we're gonna put this on TV. So even the stuff that's based on a true story, most of the time you see that message on the top. Any characters depicted, they put a little note on there. So they gotta spice it up a little bit so that we as the consumers watch and we're entertained with the information. So those actors in the movie, that's just what they are. They're actors. They're portraying a story that somebody gave them and portraying a storyline. So Sandra Bullock doesn't have anything to do with the Michael Oher situation and the family line or Michael Oher line or whatever the story comes out of this. But I just hope they all work it out because it is a feel good story. Michael Oher was a success regardless of his background. He came up and he had some drugs, family members on drugs, and he came up from a rough background. But at the end of the day, that was a young, successful African-American male that came out of a rough environment, and he made it to the NFL and became a success. And he made some money. He might not have got all the money that he was supposed to get off of the deal, but at the end of the day, he was a success. And I hope they work the situation out and they all come together and, kumbaya and continue loving on each other. But it's an unfortunate situation, but I hope they work it out.
And it could be one of those situations where he was done playing football and started looking back and like seeing how everyone connected around him was able to prosper and able to do certain things. Now he was like, "Dad, they got all that money and all this was going on around me, and what happened with me? I got some, but they were basically leeching off me. So that might have been a light bulb that turned on after he started writing that book. So he's like, maybe I need some publicity for the books, maybe I need to add something to it. You just never know. Even documentaries you can't believe anymore. Look at have you seen any Johnny Manziel?
Yeah, I seen some of that one.
If he was living that wild, I'm like, how he get away with some of that stuff? But you just never know, especially college football. When you the face of that town, you can get away with some things.
Yeah, you never know. And then one thing that I thought was interesting with that family is they had money, before, Michael Oher came into the picture. So they own Taco Bells, and they ended up buying, I think it was like 41 more Taco Bells after they made money off of the movie and everything that came behind The Blind Side. So just they took their money and invested it, and then from the NFL side, I'm not counting his money. I don't know what he did with his money, but they invested their money and made their money work for them at the end of the day. So just that's one thing to just think about is, I don't know where everybody's financial situation is and what goes into that, but lesson learned. Just make sure that when you do business deals or different things of that nature, that everybody gets what they want at the end of the day. And you can't please everybody, but you have to give and take and make sure in different things of that situation. But it seems like they're trying to rectify it. I see they're getting rid of the conservatorship and dropping that, so Michael Oher can make his own financial decisions based on that money from The Blind Side and everything that happened from that. So I think they'll work that situation out. And just to kind of move on from that to talk about just youngsters, and right now it seems like the young football player is an investment.
Yeah.
So we talk about the NIL, and we talked about this before, but the NIL is trickling down to youth football, middle school football, high school football. So it's just everything revolves around that dollar sign now, and it's just people are seeing football players now, even at an early age, and youth football, as I said, as an investment in moneymaker. So you have to be careful who you surround yourself around and the people you have in your corner, and just being careful with that. And when the parents start seeing those dollar signs and NIL and this and that, it just gets messy from that side of things. So what are your thoughts on that?
I would say even from the whole Michael Oher things, that's going to change the ball game with the NIL, and I think players have to be smarter about what's going on now, just knowing that it's a different ball game, especially than when we were growing up. It was about having fun in middle school and high school. You trying to get to college, you trying to get a scholarship. Now in middle school, you trying to get $1 million deal by you 18. So the whole landscape is changing, and people are seeing that, and it's sad to see, but it's business. It's going to change. I think it's going to change a lot with football, especially middle school, with even with kids playing year round now. And we talked about the reclassification. I'm like, I didn't even think about somebody holding me back a year from school to be better in football. Like, they're always gonna be better players coming out. You got to perform. You got to get out there and grind. So I don't know about the reclassification and how that makes sense. But I don't have a parent in high school, and a kid in high school going through that as well. So they may see it as an advantage for them.
Yeah, and the reclassification thing. So just I've been talking to some of my old teammates and some of my friends. So California and Texas apparently been doing this for a long time. So reclassification, for those who don't know, so a lot of these states, when these athletes get to 8th grade, for example, they'll hold them back. So 8th grade is that last year before you get to high school. So especially with the males, they say the males develop a lot slower than the females as far as mentally, physically, just the maturity standpoint of it. So a lot of people now are, we say hope you failed or you got held back, but a lot of people now are holding these kids back when they're in 8th grade, and they're using that basically as a redshirt year in middle school. So now you're an 8th grader, you're a year older, you're stronger, you're bigger, you're faster, you're more mature. And the premise, what I was told was the premise behind it was, you get that extra year of high school. You can still graduate early. So you graduate in December. They have the early signing period now in college. So you go to college, you start taking college classes that spring semester. You can go to spring practice, and when that summer comes around, you're there before all the freshmen. So now you're bigger, faster, stronger. You know the playbook. You've been acclimated to the system. So you potentially have a better shot of starting as a true freshman in college now, because you had that extra year, but now you still graduate, that December of your unofficial senior year because you got held back. So that's the premise behind it. And you see a lot of these players come out of Texas and California, and we're looking at these high school kids now, and these kids are bigger than some of the guys we play with. So it makes a big difference. So that's the whole reclassification movement that's going on now. And I'm up and down on both sides of it. So of course a lot of the mothers are like, you need to graduate high school and get your education, and some of the dads are like, hey, well, we can put them in this other class. And it's different situations where depends on what position you play. If there's a lot of receivers coming out, it's just like when you're in college. Do I come out my junior year? Do I come out my senior year? You got to look at who's there. So now you have parents looking at that from a high school standpoint as, do I go to college this year or do I go to college this next year? So it's a lot that goes into it, and I get both sides of it, but it's an interesting situation.
Yeah, I think the problem for me with that is just you just never know what can happen with your future. You hold back a kid from the education, and they can go get injured and never play football again. What do they have to fall back on?
Yeah.
So you think you focus just on football, and I think about them graduating, what they're going to do after college, and I feel more about that because that's what happened to me. As soon as I got to Penn State, I blew up my ACL. I never had a major injury, and after I tore my ACL, I'm like, am I ever going to play again? What's next? And I was banking on just playing football. So it's like after that, I'm like, you got to get your education. You got to have a backup plan. And if somebody was holding me back from going to college the time I did and me just focus on that, I'm like, well, I'm in college, but I can't play football no more. So that might be why you see some kids drop out after injuries and things like that. And just to transition, just going through things in college and what we talked about when kids not wanting to wait and just how nowadays the kids are, I wouldn't say softer. I think the mentality is different.
Yeah. So we in that participation generation.
Yeah.
Right? So everybody gets a trophy. Everybody's a winner. You know, not to get too much into my situation, but everybody has to play a certain amount of plays. So, you know, we came up in that era where if you played at the park and you weren't good enough to play,
you on that bench.
then you watching everybody else playing, you just got to get better as a player. So, you know, from that standpoint, and just to kind of go back to the NIL thing. So, you know, players now, they figure that if I can play as a freshman, I can get that NIL money earlier. You know, so that kind of goes into that too. So now I have people looking at me because I came in, and now I'm the hot thing coming to college football. Like, you know, Eli Manning's nephew. Yeah. You know, he's down there in Texas, so he came in, like, his NIL value is through the roof as a true freshman right now, just because of what he did in high school. So, you know, but we're in that, you know, to go back, we're in that participation generation now where, you know, everybody's who, you know, but, you know, you got to push through, and you see it in basketball, you see it in football, you know, you see these AAU teams where these players are just groomed and just treated like kings, and then you get to college and somebody says, well, you're not good enough. Yeah. You know, you're not good enough to play here, or you got to wait another year, or you got a red shirt, and it's like, oh, well, I'll go somewhere else and play. Yeah. So, you know, there's always, you know, I remember when we were in school, we had a coach tell us, he said, hard work will beat talent if talent doesn't work hard. So at the end of the day, you got to put your work in, because if you transfer, and I'll say this, the whole transfer portal thing, we always hear about the good stories. So we never hear about the players that transfer and end up sitting the bench or don't get a scholarship somewhere else. So just keep that in mind. Everybody wants to say, oh, I'm going to jump in the transfer portal. But there's a lot of kids that jump in the transfer portal that don't come out. Yeah. There's a lot of kids that jump in there. So you're going to hear about the good stories. You're going to hear about the feel-good stories. But a lot of times that doesn't work out. That's the rare, that's the minority when it comes to the transfer portal. So that hard work is never undefeated. Yeah. So, you know, you got to put your work in. You got to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do. And at the end of the day, everything will work itself out. So my thing is, if it's for you, you know, if it's in God's plan, what God got for you, can't nobody take away from it. Yeah. So,
and life is just is bigger than football. And going through things teach you how to have grit, how to fight through, and how to prosper. Everything isn't gonna be all nice and easy, and you're gonna go through. Even like when you're not playing football, you on your regular job, you're gonna go through. You might not like your boss, or somebody might say something to you, but you're gonna quit. You got a family to feed.
Exactly.
So football teaching you not just football, it's teaching you life. You got to fight through, and if something happens, sometimes you got to listen. Sometimes it's for the betterment for you. You just don't know. And even like I know we talked about Eric Bieniemy and his coaching style, and how some of the players didn't like how he came. He was too aggressive, but you also got to understand he was a player as well. So he played in the league, so he's not coming in just like a coach coaching players. He was actually a player, so he might look at it a lot. He might be different from him in the locker room, and he's a winner. Yeah. He coming to Washington, a place where they ain't been doing a lot of winning, so they might not be used to that tough coaching.
Yeah, and that goes back to what we were saying about just generation, like. from the mentality, like we in this whole microwave generation where everybody wants instant gratitude now. There's no working through the process and working your way up, and everybody wants to come in. When they come from high school, I'm that guy. When they go to college, they want to be that guy. But you realize it's 80 people just like you.
Yeah.
So how are you gonna separate yourself?
Yeah.
So you're not gonna walk to a situation where the coach is gonna tell you what you want.
Yeah.
To get you there. But once again, when they get you there, they just want you. They want to get you there to compete with that talent pool that they have, and then they're gonna pull those upper echelons guys, and those are the guys that are gonna play. And some of those guys are gonna go to the next level, and some of those guys are not. So, and my question to you is: so, a lot of people say, "Well, I didn't have a plan B because I was only focused on plan A." And I see both sides of it, because if you say, "Well, I have a plan B," then in some sense you're thinking about failure. You're thinking about not making it. But at the same time, you have to have a plan B, even if you make plan A. We talked to Dexter Davis last week. He made his plan A. He made it to the NFL. But what do you do after that post-career? You still have to have that thought process of thinking ahead and not just thinking that one thing. Nobody's going to play in the NFL for their whole lifespan. At some point, the NFL is going to be done with you, or you're going to be done with the NFL if you make it to that point and you in that 1 or 2%, whatever that percentage is now. So what do you say to those people that say, "Well, I don't have a plan B. My plan A is to make it here. I'm only focused on this"?
I would say you have to have a plan B, because just that plan A football is only 1%. I think only 3% get a scholarship to play D1 football. Only 1% make it to NFL. And that 1%, not all of them getting $1 million contracts. Some are only getting $300,000, and 1 year they out and they don't have a degree. What are you gonna do next? So you have to have a backup plan. You have to be networking in college. You just have to think past just playing football, because injuries, things you don't think about, injuries. So you may never get hurt in middle school, high school, college, and NFL. You get assigned $1 million contract and you're done. And they don't last. You just never know. So you always have to have a backup plan. You have to just think further and just have a passion. You have to, because even being young, it was all about football, but I wish I was just as passionate about something else like I was about football.
Yeah.
Because football is something, is more luck than anything. You got to be the right place, the right time. You can be on a team and say a linebacker go down. They need extra linebackers, so they're going to cut a running back.
Yep.
So you got to think about all those things. It's not just about being good. You got to be the right place, right time, have luck in the right situation. Everything has to kind of fall in line.
Yeah, everything has to work itself out. And, just like you said, being good, that's just not enough anymore.
But
so,
you also have to position yourself to make sure when that time comes that you're ready for your opportunity. You always got to work hard. You always have to be in the books. You always have to know the plays. You have to be on top of everything as well.
Yeah.
So you can't just show up and think, "Oh, I'm gonna play because I'm this or I'm that," because it don't work like that. Especially when you get in the NFL, everybody good.
Everybody's good.
I remember even when I went to Penn State, and I just talk about just trying to like fit in, and not, you think when you come into college, you think, "Oh, I have to do this so I can play," but you also have to know that you got to fit into a team. I remember even when I was playing Joe, I tried to run for 80-yard touchdown every play, and Joe's like, "Kenlaw, you can't do that. Just give me 5 yards. That's all I need. It don't lose 5. And me trying to get 80, I'm losing 5 and 10. But I might get 80, but that's not what he wants. You gotta, because he has a play for, say, 2nd and 8 or 2nd and 9. He might not have nothing for 2nd and 17 after I lost 7 yards. So you have to think about the bigger picture, and when you get to college, it's not all about you.
Yeah.
So.
It's that team atmosphere, and just so you talked about Joe Paterno. So Joe Paterno was old school coach. Lou Holtz was an old school coach. So you mentioned Eric Bieniemy earlier. Just that mentality. So for those who don't know, this came out a couple weeks ago. So Eric Bieniemy, he took the assistant head coach job with the Washington Commanders. We talked about this before, but I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, so the Washington Commanders can, whatever. But we're gonna talk about them here for a little bit. But the players were complaining about Eric Bieniemy's coaching style, and we heard LaShawn McCoy talk about it on another podcast, another show. But he basically said that Eric Bieniemy, was not a good coach, and he didn't know how to relate to the players. He didn't know how to talk to the players. And you hear about his coaching style, and he's been with Andy Reid for the Kansas City stint. I think 5 AFC championships. They got 2 Super Bowl rings. He's coaching the top quarterback, in my opinion, in the NFL, and a lot of people think Patrick Mahomes is a top quarterback right now. But you know, he went over to the Commanders and the players are saying, hey, we don't like the way he's talking to us. You know, we don't like the way he's yelling at us. We don't like his intensity. And, you know, you mentioned it like, you know, what y'all were doing before is not working.
Exactly.
Because you have been successful. And the Commanders have a new ownership group coming in, Magic Johnson being part of that group. But, you know, just to kind of talk about this participation generation and this mentality that we're talking about, I think that kind of trickles into the NFL. And I'm not in the Commanders locker room. I'm not on the practice field. But once again, just the grumblings that we've been hearing about, hey, he's being mean to us, essentially. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's the NFL. So some of those players feel entitled. They got $1 million, they got Porsches and Lamborghinis outside. So it's like, you coming here, what you telling me?
Yeah.
And sometimes players, they just there for the check. They don't want to win. They're not looking for the championship. You gotta think the enemy is a winner. And you gotta think at Kansas City, the players were coming in expecting to win, so they would fall in line and fall into that culture of winning. And watch it, and at the Commanders, they're not used to that, so it's like a shock to them. So, but you have to, when you're around winners, you have to level your game up. You got to be able to step up to the plate. If you can't do it, then maybe you need to be gone.
Yeah, yeah, and I look at it too as, you know, when you come into the NFL, a lot of these guys are drafted. You know, if that team picks you, you have to go play for that team. Unless, you know, Eli Manning, you pull an Eli Manning and say, well, I'm not going to this team. I don't want to play for this coach. But 9 times out of 10, whatever team drafts you, you're going to have to play for that team. Yeah. And, you know, when you go to college, you get to pick your coach. You know, you go visit the school, you go talk to those coaches, you go watch the practices, you see how those coaches are operating and how they maneuver. And a lot of these high school kids, they want to go play for Nick Saban. They want to go play for those coaches that are going to coach them hard because they want to get to the league. Yeah. And I think it's ironic that you go to high school, you go to college, and you want to play for a coach like that. But then when you get the money, you make it to the NFL, then I made it now, so I don't want to be coached like that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's ironic that when you get to the NFL, why wouldn't you want to be coached hard? And, you know, and we had this conversation too. Now, it's one thing if the coach is critiquing my play as a player. Yeah. But if you are critiquing me as a person, that's something different. And, you know, I'm sure you probably had coaches along the way. I definitely had one along the way. I'm not calling his name, but, you know, it's one thing to critique my play as a player, and it's another thing to critique as a person. So I think as long as you can not cross those lines and make sure that you respect the individual but critique their play at the same time. And you learn your coaches, you learn your players. Yeah. So as he's coming in, he sets that, like you talked about culture. I'm big on culture, and that winning culture, if that worked in Kansas City, now his methods may have to be a little different because he has to acclimate himself to the players and learn how they operate. But once again, there's some things that are they are non-negotiables as a coach. I know this works. I've been successful over here doing this. So let's try to implement this over here. Yeah. So either you're going to be on board and we can turn this thing around, or we can keep doing what we're doing and keep getting the same results. Yeah.
So, and I also remember, I think, didn't the head coach say something as well? So he got to be on board with the way B&B coaching these players as well. He can't go and say something and make him look like he with the players. So that's causing a division in the locker room.
Yeah. So, Ron Rivera came out to the media and he said, some of the players were complaining about Eric Bieniemy and how he was talking to the players. So, you know, in my opinion, as a head coach, I felt like that should have been internal, right? Yeah. So if the players came to talk to you as a head coach and said, hey, we don't like the way he's talking to us, that should have been, hey, we need to have a team meeting. We need to get this thing all on one accord. Like, I brought this guy in here. Yeah. I brought him in here for a reason. Yeah. So if you guys trust me as a head coach, then from an organizational standpoint, this is what we need to develop that winning culture here in Washington, D.C. So, and, you know, like I said, that goes back to the whole AAU situation, the whole NIL. It's just, this generation is just not patient, for one. Yeah. They don't like to be told no. Yeah. They don't like to be told that they're not good enough. And you can be good, but, like, once again, if you're not depending on that team you on, you might not be good enough to play the starting corner. You might be a nickel on this team. You might go somewhere else and be a starting cornerback. You might be a slot wide receiver on this team, and my number 2 option You go somewhere else, you a number one.
Yeah.
So it just depends on what that situation is and what that team needs at that time. And then as a player, you got to really check yourself and say, okay, well, I look myself in the mirror, and do I want to do what's best for the team, or do I want to do what's best for me? And doing what's best for you sometimes may be short term.
Yeah.
Doing what's best for the team may be that long game, that end game where you can play 10, 12 years in the league.
Yeah.
So you got to think about that too. Even in college, you got to think about that. What's best for the team?
And it goes back to what you were saying. You come out of high school and you got this coach loving you, telling you everything you want to hear, and you go to the school, and after 1 year, the coach get fired, or the coach decide to leave.
Yeah.
Now you with a coach you don't know.
Yeah.
Are you gonna push through, and are you gonna try to make it work, and try to do the best you can, get on the field, or are you gonna be like in your feelings because the coach left and feel a certain way and try to leave?
Yeah.
You never know. You can leave and go somewhere else and be behind somebody else. I think this generation has to learn patience. You have to learn tenacity and pushing through. It's not, like I said, it's not going to be easy. And nothing worth having is easy.
No.
It feels so much better once you do push through something and you get to the end of it, and that feeling is just different. Because for me, it was more about the process. I fell in love with the process. So you got to fall in love with the process. You got to like working out. You got to like doing the right things. And Joe would always say, take care of the little small things, and the big things take care of themselves. So you got to do little things like waking up on time, going to class, and even some players get in a situation where they don't go to class and they're in a doghouse. Now they mad at the coach. It's the coach's fault. No, it's your fault because you didn't go to class.
Yeah.
You was taking care of your stuff on the football field, but not off the field. So you got to take care of both. When you go to college, it's teaching you to be an adult.
Exactly.
And you gotta grow up.
Yeah, you gotta grow up. You gotta mature. And once again, like you said, when you get to college, if you're fortunate enough and blessed enough to get to the NFL, the degrees of separation is very small.
Yeah.
So in high school, you're gonna have a gap, right?
Yeah.
When you get to college, that gap it narrows. When you get to the NFL, it narrows even more. So. That right situation, just the work you put in, that work ethic, your mentality on and off the field. How do you bond with your teammates in the locker room, right? If I don't, once again, I might not like you, but if I respect you and I know you're gonna block for me, then I'm gonna block for you. I'm gonna give you 100% here and there. Same thing with the coaching staff. If I trust you, if I believe in you, I'm gonna play for you no matter what. I heard Michael Oher say with Ray Lewis. He said, he played on the Ravens team when the Ravens won the Super Bowl. He said Ray Lewis could look at you, and he said we would all be fired up just on the look on his face. You know what I'm saying? So just that mentality and how everybody bonds together, all of that plays into that. So you got to think about that as a player when you coming into it. What is your mentality? Am I willing to work? Am I willing to do the little things?
Yeah.
Am I willing to come in early and leave late?
Yeah.
Am I willing to come in and put my time in the weight room? I'm gonna open that playbook a little bit. I'm gonna go out here and enjoy the fruits of my loins and do these different things. And the same thing with college. So, you gotta go through the process.
Yeah.
Because if you transfer to one school, somebody else is looking at that school too.
Yeah.
You come in there, it's gonna be somebody transfer that next year too. So once again, hard work is undefeated. You gotta put your work in no matter what the situation is. You got to put your work in. So, to all these guys, the transfer portal and NIL and reclassification and all these terms and all this stuff. At the end of the day, put your work in, do what you got to do, and keep the main thing the main thing. I heard Dion say that, and I like that phrase. Keep the main thing the main thing. So, if you love football, then that's A.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then everything else falls in place, but you got to make sure you keep that proper balance, because if everything gets out of balance, then you're gonna have some sways there, and you're gonna have some failures and some disappointments in different areas.
Yeah.
And if you have some disappointments, then grow from it, learn from it.
You got to push through, and you also understand everybody ain't gonna make it to the NFL, and even we talk about it like it's simple, because we grew up around a lot of players who went to college and went to NFL and did things like that. But everybody isn't going to make it out of high school. So many players, only maybe say 60, 70 players on a high school team, 1 or 2 might get a scholarship.
Yeah.
And those are real numbers. It doesn't seem like that when you're going through it. Until you step outside of where you at and you see how good these players are. Like, you gotta raise your level up. It's like you was good back home, you go somewhere else. I'm like, good Lord, everybody good, everybody fast, everybody big, everybody strong. You just waiting to see where you gonna fit in at.
Yeah.
But you gotta grind, you gotta push harder, you gotta work, you gotta outwork everybody. And that's not just in football. That's with everything. Being a father, being a husband, living life. You got to work hard because nothing's gonna come easy. You just got to keep pushing and grinding it.
Yeah, and that's one thing I like about the sport of football is any sport that any kid can get into is a great experience. It's great for life lessons and just being a better person. But from that football standpoint, just that physicality and that mentality, and you're gonna have those coaches like Eric Bieniemy. Yeah. You're gonna have one of those coaches at one of those levels. Depending on how far you go, you're gonna have one of those coaches that, hey, I remember this coach right here. He was so hard on me. He beat me down. I went home crying, over something he said or whatever the situation may be. But at the end of the day, that prepares you for different situations in life. And we talked about this on the last episode, and we talked about this before, is, a lot of these companies and corporations that like military and former athletes. Think about how they talk to people in basic training. I seen it on, you hear some of these stories and different things about that. But, it prepares you to build that thick skin and be able to take criticism. Yeah. A lot of times, in the workplace and different things like that, people can't take criticism.
Yeah, don't take everything personal.
Yeah, don't take it personal. It's not personal. I'm talking about your performance. I'm talking about what you're doing, and that goes back to what I was saying about if you're critiquing my performance, I have no problem with that. Yeah. And a lot of people that non-athletes or people that are non-military or people that haven't been through that, they don't know how to take that and don't know how to make the necessary adjustments and can't handle that and process that mentally because they haven't been through that and been through that fire. So that's the good thing about being an athlete and just playing sports and being in that team environment to where you have somebody giving you direction and it prepare you for different situations in life.
And it just teaches you to listen sometimes. Well, I remember even at Penn State, I don't know if you remember Levi Brown. He ended up going, I think it was the 5th pick to the Cardinals back in like 2005. But he came in at Penn State as a D lineman, and he was like, he wanted to play D line. He did not want to play offensive line. And Joe talked to him. He eventually switched and ended up being a first-round pick. Yeah. So sometimes you may think you know, but sometimes the coach know better. Yeah. And they see something that you might not see in yourself.
Yeah, and that's the coach's job.
Exactly.
Right? That's the coach's job, is to bring out the best in the players, bring out the best as a student athlete. Yeah. And to make you well-rounded and just groom you from all standards. And when you're picking a college, once again, you don't pick your NFL team, right? Yeah. But when you go to college, you wanna factor all of that in. Yeah. What do I want my education to look like? What do I want to look like after 4 years or 5 years or 3 years, whatever however it works out for you. But what do I want to look like, and who do I want to have that hand on me when I'm away from my parents? Yeah. Because most of us are fortunate enough, and some people are not. But even if you're not, you want to have people in your corner that are going to groom you and instill those values in you that you need and that you want and that you. The main point of this episode is just work hard. Make sure you find yourself, put yourself in a good situation. Be patient. Trust the process. Just continue to grow, develop, and mature. And have faith and trust in the coaches that are leading you and guiding you.
And I just want to leave everyone with just, players, make sure you're coachable. And even when you're coming down to the decision of what college you want to go to, think about things other than just football. If you want to be an engineer and you got a scholarship at Georgia Tech, that would be a great choice because in engineering at Georgia Tech. If you want finance and you want to go somewhere in North Carolina, UNC, Wake Forest, it's the banking industry there. So just making sure you make smart decisions and thinking about more than just football, because there's life after football, and you want to make sure that you're set up for a good life after as well.
Once again, we just enjoyed this episode. Good being here, sitting here with my cuz, PCP fam. We enjoyed being with you again. Once again, send us some gear. We'll shout you out. Send us some spirits if you want to. We'll shout you out. Be sure to follow, like, subscribe. Tell all your friends, family members. PCP, Palmetto Crew Podcast, signing off. Thanks for being with us, fam. Spurs up.